On episode 252 of the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast, we speak to Heenle Turner, and she's going to tell you how you can hire that 5-star employee that you've always dreamed of. That's right, folks. It's all about hiring today. Are you ready for this? All right, let's do it. Welcome one, welcome all to the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast, a weekly podcast series dedicated to helping you hit peak performance across the 3 domains of leadership. Those being leading yourself, leading your team, and leading your organization. This podcast couples my 20 years of military experience as a senior Canadian Army officer with world-class guests to bring you the most complete podcast of leadership going. And for more, feel free to check out our website at movingforwardleadership.com. And with that, let's get to the show. Yes, welcome one, welcome all to the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast. It is your Chief Leadership Officer, Scott McCarthy, and thanks for tuning in yet again. And this week, we are diving into hiring your employees. And for this, I decided to go out and get an expert in the area, the owner of her own company all around hiring employees, and that's Heenle Turner. And in this episode, what you're going to hear about is her basically process of going out and hiring those 5-star employees. And 5-star employees it's more than just saying top tier employees, but rather that is actually part of her process anyway. So in this podcast episode, we talk about, why hiring vacancies are still a thing, what the process looks like, how to make sure we're going after the right people, what the makeup of a 5-star candidate is, level universal qualities within one of those 5-star candidates, and so much more. So it's action-packed, jammed to the gills. So if you're looking to hire someone and maybe you're struggling to hire the right person, this podcast episode is definitely for you. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for me. You know what? That's enough. So why don't you sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Heenle Turner all about hiring that 5-star employee. Welcome to the podcast. So good to have you here today.
Good. Thank you for having me.
I knew, I got good feelings, good vibes with today. We're there before we hit record, and you started immediately talking to people about hockey and Canada and stuff. I'm like, all right, this girl knows what she's talking about. So this is going to be a rocking show.
Great. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. So today we are talking about getting that 5-star candidate hired. Now, here we're at. It's 2023, March. I'm actually on March break. And as we record this, and the themes are still, circling around, kind of post-COVID, post-COVID. No one to be hired. We're missing people. Great resignation. We've gone through I don't know how many iterations of these great quote unquote things. So quiet quitting, great resignation. I've heard another one pop up yet again. I've actually just kind of tuned out to them, to be honest. But the moral of the story is that business owners, leaders out there are finding a hard time filling the gaps of the vacancies they have in positions. Why is this still going around when I hear other people saying, can't find a job, man? What's going on from your perspective?
It has to be a combination of things, and I would say, people are still not finding what they're looking for in terms of job seekers, and I think employers and business owners are still struggling with that right formula, that right process to to take the time and find the 5-star candidates, the ones who are truly the best fit for their organization. And so with that, environment, with that, um, both parties, struggling a little bit on their end, um, and and then you've got every single person out there doing the same thing, right? One application after the other, applying to every job, and just kind of getting lost with the applications, the assessment fatigue, the wait, who did I apply to? Like, who are you again? And then that it's sort of all coming together with this it's quite unfortunate situation where we still have drop great candidates and great people out there still looking for work, and organizations who are really struggling without that right person.
So what I'm hearing from you is, obviously multiple factors. Never a problem is never one issue per se, especially at this level. But what I'm hearing in particular is one, organizations aren't necessarily marketing themselves that well out there to their potential candidate pools. Describing exactly who they are, what they stand for, what their company values are, what value they bring to society as a whole per se, and in particular what that position is going to bring in. Two, kind of candidates out there kind of not inversely not doing the same to themselves and kind of doing that whole what we refer to as spray and pray. So launch out, I'll apply to this 15 different job postings and hopefully I land one and then life will be okay. And in the end, they probably may not even get one because they didn't really focus themselves at that particular position. Would that be a fair summary of how I read you?
I love it.
All right, so let's look at it from the leadership standpoint here. So
Yeah.
again, we have a lot of business owners, many middle to senior leaders listening who are looking to hire people. And you mentioned process, not having the right process there. Like, isn't it simple? Like, oh, I got a job, I throw up an ad for the job, and isn't that good enough? Shouldn't that be good enough to
You know,
hire someone?
so it might have been good enough at one point, but really, it's not working. People are still not getting the candidates that they want. They're wasting their time with unqualified people who really just have a pulse, and they're looking to work with any organization. So to continuing to do that same thing and just throwing a job posting out there and hoping that there's a match there, that's just really not the way. So you want to have an objective process that starts with like full transparency about exactly what it is you're looking for. So you want to be you want to have this step by step automated process that really filters out people who are that mismatched, those 1, 2, and 3-star candidates who are not a good match for your organization or who don't meet, basic qualifying questions. Like for instance, when if in a lot of a like engineering field, for example, you need to have a particular degree or maybe a license, to even sign off and complete that project. And so if your one of your basic qualifying questions should be, you know, do you have this license? Yes or no. And if someone says no, then you don't really need to spend your time interviewing them. It's a waste of time for both of you, right? It's not going to work for you, and it's not really fair to that person to kind of go through that process. And then so you need to have a process that filters out those folks who are not a good fit and who are not qualified. That way, by the time you get to the person who you're interviewing with, you're really just looking at potential rock stars to join your organization. And when we talk about fit and qualifications, we're really talking about mindset and skill set, right? So you need to have people who think, breathe, and really act like you as the business owner. Because if you have an employee who, like for example, if it's important for you to pay attention to detail, if it's important for you to triple check every single piece of, just say writing or document that goes out to your clients, then that needs to be important to everybody in your organization, because everybody needs to understand that and kind of get it. Right. So you need to find people, the first, like, who are your 5-star employees, and 5-star employees are really unique to every organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like a lot of things that you said there. One, identifying who the job isn't for is definitely crucial, right? Like, who is not the right fit here?
Right.
I don't think we necessarily do that enough. So you kind of use it as like, okay, if you need this qualification or certification, license, whatever, that's immediately saying if you don't have it, then this job obviously isn't for you. That's the easy way to do it. And also, I like to when I think about positions and when I'm hiring people and bringing people into my team, like, okay, you know, who is it that we don't want to come in here? And not saying that they're bad or something, is that they're not necessarily the right fit for the job. So I like that part. Definitely, we, organizations out there need to really take ownership and make sure that they get this right, right? Because this is important, because it goes through a huge process of time commitment, money commitment for the whole team. But two, you're bringing someone into your team, or bring them into your inner circle. And if you don't have this right and you don't get the right candidate, this could be detrimental to your organization, because you could end up dealing with this person for 3-6 months to only in the end say, hey, this isn't a good fit, have them leave, and then you start right back over again. So let's go like right to the beginning of like, where do we, I guess my question is like, where do we go to make sure we're advertising ourselves, our companies, and our positions to these 5-star candidates? Like, how can we identify the places where they're hanging out, where we can actually get our job postings in front of them, so that we're going to be more successful in the future?
Yeah, so there's two things. So one, you, as the business owner, you have to take the time and articulate, like, what exactly your 5-star employee looks like. So 5-star employees have 5 distinct qualities. So one, they share, their core values align with those of the business owner. So you have to understand first what's important to you, so that you're able to identify that in other people, and kind of test for that, and really just throw it right there on that job posting to demonstrate, this is what our core values are, and they're sort of the DNA of our organization, and everyone on our team shares these. So you have to be very specific and, like, transparent about things, about everything, starting with your own core values, and understanding that yourself. You also have um, to understand that all 5-star employees have the same, consistent, you know thread, right? So they're all accountable. They all share the 11 universal qualities. They're all excellent listeners. They're all limber. They all produce quantifiable results. And then when you start looking at the position, right, you need to understand, well, what are the specific aptitudes and skills for the role, and what does success look like? And so once you have a good, you have a clear idea of what all of this means to your organization, then you start crafting this job posting that really highlights and tells you exactly what the expectations are here. So, um, for example, like, you need to be very, very specific, right? So if you're expecting certain results, if you have a quota, if you have a goal for sales, a goal for outbound calls, put that right there on the resume. So the person who reads, or the job listing, the person who reads that will, the 5-star candidate will look at that information and welcome the challenge and appreciate the organization, appreciate the level of detail. And that's the type of person who you want to attract. The person who sees that and says, not interested, they're not going to apply anyway. You've just filtered out someone else who you don't want to meet with. And then to answer your question about, well, where do I post this job? How do I get more people, to apply and really and be interested into this, to my team and my organization? You have to think differently. You have to go outside the box. So you can't post to just to one job board. You have to like a look take a look at multiple job boards. You need to think about doing other things like elevating your referral program. Maybe you're going to post in specific groups that are local to your market, like on using social media. So maybe there is a industry specific group. Maybe you're marketing your business, and maybe you're a guest speaker at a school or university. Maybe you're trying to figure out, well, where did my current five-star employees come from, and how maybe I can market to the same place where they came from.
Yeah, it's kind of like what I said earlier about being when you're an applicant, you can't really spray and pray. I guess as as a leader, as a business owner, you kind of can't do the same, right? You can't just throw it up on LinkedIn and expect get the right result. Can't necessarily throw it up on Indeed or whatever, but rather you have to think about from your perspective employee shoes of like, okay, where do they hang out? Where do they look for their job opportunities? And I like the referral thing, and I like that point. I think that's a huge point that necessarily doesn't get enough light is that, the referral thing is because someone's come to you with a known entity. Now, there's a bit of risk to that, just saying, yeah, Bob here's the best ever. But, reality is Bob isn't. It's just that they've been best friends since they were in grade school. But then that means you have to have your checks and balances in place in order for that. But at the same time is, it's like, yeah, I've worked with Bob over at this other company I worked for 5 years, and he was the rock star of the place. He kept the place together. The company just didn't recognize it, and that's why he left. Oh, okay. Well, let's have a chat with Bob and see what Bob can bring to the table here. So I think that could be definitely a powerful tool in the toolbox.
Right. And I mean, you got to remember too, and if your organization has a thorough, like we refer to it as a hiring gauntlet. So every applicant who comes um, into our sphere, if they're, whether they're through a referral, whether they're through ZipRecruiter, Indeed, LinkedIn, whatever it is, they still go through the same hiring process. So they're filling out the application, they're answering those same questions, they're taking a skills test, they're conducting a screening interview, and then having another deep dive interview. They're meeting the team, and finally, they're experiencing sort of a day in the life of the role. And we want to we appreciate the referrals, and so it should maybe reward the effort of the current employees who can think of somebody to bring into the organization, but they still have to go through our hiring gauntlet to join our team, because we still want to make sure that that person is aligned with the needs and wants of our organization, and that they're really still a good fit.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense for sure. Take the word, but don't blindly take it. But at the same time, put them through the same process that you put everyone else through. And that's just fair and transparent, which I personally agree with and value big time. Now, earlier you mentioned that the 5-star candidate, 5-star hiring process, there's 5 aspects to that. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Okay, can we dive into those and hear more about them? So what are those 5 aspects to it?
Sure. Yeah. So a 5-star candidate, so they earn each star, right? So the first one is that they have their core values align with that of the business owner. So the second is that they have that they score 7 or higher on the 11 universal qualities of a 5-star employee. So some of those qualities are 5-star employees. They enjoy to learn. They're great listeners. They produce quantifiable results. They're very limber, and then the third star is that the 5-star candidate meets or exceeds your expectations for your role specific skills or aptitudes. So if you need somebody, for example, who makes a great first impression, maybe you have somebody who needs to be organized, maybe you have somebody um, who needs to be compliant, right? Rule and checklist oriented. So you need to decide what your app roles and what the aptitudes and skills are for the roles, and then make sure that the people you're hiring, have that meet your expectations there. The fourth star is that they are committed and capable of meeting your success metrics. So, like for the easy example is, if you're looking for like a chef at a bakery, maybe your your specific measurable success metric may be that they're producing 60 cookies an hour, right? So you're that specific about exactly what you need. You're not just looking for somebody who could make a chocolate chip cookie. You're looking for somebody who can make 60 chocolate chip cookies an hour, right? Um, and then the last star is that their salary meets a minimum of 3x return on payroll. So they're because they're producing results for you, because they're committed to meeting your success metrics, they're going to give you a solid return on their investment.
Those are definitely some interesting things. One, I definitely like the core values thing.
Yes.
Right. And
Fan
actually,
favorite.
it's, yeah, no, because it's something that we don't necessarily talk about a lot, but I think it's becoming more and more important. And I think that's kind of back to probably one of the original questions is that a lot of people out there, one, are struggling to find organizations that match their core values. And two, I think a lot of people are having a hard time understanding what the heck their core values are in the first place, hence why they're kind of bopping from job to job, which is understandable. When we're talking about younger employees, like in their early 20s and stuff like this, because you're still trying to figure out who the heck you are and stuff like that. I'm 40 now, and I'm still trying to figure out who the heck I am, so I get it. But I like that, and actually, just a side tangent is that I actually have a core values exercise for the members of my leader growth mastermind. So it's actually one of the first exercises that gets tossed towards them, saying, "Hey, check this out." And as core values as a leader. So what do you as a leader stand for? Which has actually become a fan favorite as well in the mastermind. So I like that one. The 11 7 of 11. Sorry, what was it? 7-Eleven qualities.
Oh, so they have to score a 7 or higher on the 11 universal qualities of a 5-star employee.
Okay, so and you mentioned a few of them. Now, where did that come from? Where do these 11 universal qualities come from? And
Yeah,
why
so
11, not 9, not 13, but 11?
yeah, I mean, so we have so this is our a trademarked 5-star employee rating system, and so it came in sort of that process and development of the system, kind of influenced by a lot of other a lot of similar like mindsets, sort of like the A player, B player, C player, a little bit of influence there, a little influence of other sort of industry experts to really like articulate what and understand what these what trends and things that we're really seeing in sort of these elite performers and the best of the best employees. And through our kind of our research and such, that's where how we landed on these 11.
Got it. Trademark stuff. This is the stuff that's next to the Heinz 57 recipe that we're not going to talk
Yes. I'm happy
about.
to.
No,
I can definitely share the 11 with you. That's probably the best
yeah, sure, if you
the best
can.
thing I can do. Yeah. So our 11 universal qualities are, someone who is supportive, collaborative, proactive, limber. They complete tasks. They achieve goals. They produce quantifiable results. So that would go back to your success metrics. Someone who listens and not just listens, but actively listens, and people who communicate their thoughts, someone who is open to feedback, and someone who is, a learner.
Those are awesome qualities.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
so what we found was like, when we couldn't really get it down to 10, but we did find that, with these 11 universal qualities are present in all of five-star employees across the board. We just got to
Right.
put that five-star employee in the right seat.
Right. 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 No, I actually like them. And I can see, I see how they would be geared towards a 5-star candidate per se, not
Hmm.
just someone who's just going to show up and do a job and go home, but rather, those are definitely geared qualities geared towards a type person who's going to show up, do the job, find ways to make it better, find ways to improve things, find ways to go above and beyond exactly what they're there to do day in day out. So
I mean,
I like those.
the person who, you know, it is just collecting a paycheck, or the person who is just coming in to just be there, to be another, like a body in your organization instead of an active contributor. It's probably someone who doesn't, enjoy the job anymore anyway, right? So maybe they started and they grew out of the job, or maybe they were never a right fit from the beginning. And so to really, scale your business and to truly, um, to do like wonderful things, you want to have a team of people who share, your passion, and can really, demonstrate that they're in the right seat, right? So they're in the right seat, and they're in the going the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So, okay, so we have these metrics, these 11 qualities. You have the job posting. We've targeted. We've targeted specific groups. Let's talk a bit about the interview process, about
Sure.
actually going through and interviewing our 5-star candidates and stuff like this. So, what are some of the I guess the failures that you see out there? The ways of not doing business interviews for the candidates out there right now. What are some of the bad habits? I guess is the words I'm looking for that are going on right now.
Yeah, sure. So the first thing one thing I'm seeing is, having, like, business owners, you want to have a screening interview before you take them through a full interview, to test, the roles, to test the aptitudes and skills for the job. So you want to screen the interview, warm the candidate up, talk them through their resume, their experience, and see if this person, um, is really a good kind of fit for you and your team, right? So just through a simple 20-minute screening interview. Um, and so I'm thinking right now, one struggle and one like kind of fail I see is people don't utilize screening interviews. They just kind of have a one shot. Let's just talk about everything under the sun, in this one interview, and it's not organized. It's not consistent, and that brings me to the next struggle. Is like there's not a consistency. So you still need to ask the um, same questions to every candidate that yields you information that's going to be helpful to understand the person's, aptitude, skills, and experience for the job. um, and then when people do ask a question in an interview, um, they tend to kind of almost feed the answer to the candidate. So, ask the question, and then, they give themselves what feels like 10 minutes, but it's been 1 second. And then they start kind of out asking a question in another way, or filling in information here and there. Like, oh, well, what about? And so you have to remember that when you ask a question to somebody, um, allow for that uncomfortable silence and let the person respond. So, somebody may need a couple seconds or 20 seconds to get everything together in their head before they can formulate a response. And then two, they may kind of be BSing you. And so like let them sit there in silence if that's the case.
Yeah, I like the latter part for sure, and leaving the uncomfortable silence because one, yes, you definitely need time to think, and two, it does allow you to start to wonder after after a really long uncomfortable silence. Then like, do they actually know what they're talking about? And then I also like the beginning part that you talked about. That initial screening interview, just to see kind of overarching. Is this candidate potentially a good fit? Uh, Definitely would agree to that. Now, I had a group on the podcast before talking about hiring and stuff like this, and they refer to them as different gateways. So you go through one interview, it's a gateway. You go through a next interview, it's the next gateway, and so on and so forth. And I definitely think that is a good way to do business because one, you're limiting the exposure of the potential candidate to your company, but two, you're also you're trying to be efficient with everyone's time. Um, so you could have one person doing the initial to make sure, and then if it's a very technical job later down the line, you bring in the technical SME or expert in and say start doing those really technical questions to the potential candidates and see what they have to say. So I definitely like that.
And you could always, when we talk, one of our stages in our hiring gauntlet is like a deep dive interview where we do ask very role specific questions to the candidate to obviously understand if they have the aptitudes necessary for the role. And although one person is usually involved in driving that conversation and interview, you certainly can have a second person in the room with you, just observing, taking notes, and someone to give you a debrief and some feedback about the candidate. So if there was something um, maybe worth just talking about, anything that stood out, or maybe it's you're all in agreement that this candidate should move forward in your process.
Now, I asked you about some of the bad habits and stuff. What are some of the best practices out there today, on the other side of the coin?
Yeah, I think having this objective step by step process, like you need to you know take the time to create a process that you're enjoying, you're comfortable with, so that when you think about hiring, it's not a awful icky HR thing that you don't want to deal with, because that's kind of the mindset that you're setting for the process. um Another really uh good step is to definitely listen to answers from it when you're in an interview, and giving the candidate a time to respond, like I shared earlier, and getting very, very, very specific about what you're looking for prior to even stepping into the interview process, or to even before you even begin recruiting. um I guess, and I think the best tip too is to really make sure you're testing in some fashion or another. Test the candidates in your somewhere in your hiring process to truly objectively evaluate whether they can actually their job do the job that you need.
Yeah, I could definitely see the need for testing, especially in very technical stuff. Um, Making sure that they're tested. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Awesome. Now, is there anything we didn't cover in the 5-star candidate hiring process?
mm, I So we went through the five different stars in the five-star rating system. um And I think we covered each star. I think, yeah, no, I think we did.
No, I was going to say I don't think we missed anything, but
Yeah.
I'm not the expert here. You were, so that's why I wanted
Yeah.
to.
So
Awesome. So as we wrap here, I do got a couple of last questions for you though.
sure.
And the first is a question I ask all the guests here at the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast, and that is, according to you, Heenle Turner, what makes a great leader?
I think someone who's a great leader is somebody who can be, what's the right word? Like, really like leads with example, and somebody who leads kind of differently for their individual team members. Right? So someone who's paying attention and making their employee feel special, like they want to. Does that make sense?
Makes absolute sense, and I would say it's a different answer to play
Yes.
off your words. Not one that I've gotten actually much. So no, I like that. I like
Good.
it
Yeah.
for sure.
I just every employee is different. So I can't. I remember, I had some people on my team who hated public attention and didn't like public recognition, and other people who loved it. So, I had to meet them where they were, right? And that's what creates the inspiration.
No, absolutely makes sense for sure. You kind of have to treat people individually, right? So I like it a lot. Final question of the show: how can people find you, follow you, be part of your journey? All about you, shameless plug. Have at it.
Oh, yes, yes. So definitely, if you want to talk to me, learn more about what we do at the All In Company, send a text message. So text higher right to 411321. Or send me an email, and Scott, you can put my email in your show notes.
Awesome. And for the listeners, always, it's easy. The links are in the show notes. Just go to leaddopeboss.com/252-252. And they're at the bottom of the show notes. Again, thank you for taking time and getting up super early, by the way. Kudos to you. Listener, you don't know, but she's actually gotten up. She's been up since 4-something a.m., I'm assuming, because it was 5 when we met for her time. So well done to you. Thanks for being a champ and coming out today.
Thanks for having me.
And that's a wrap for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast. But you know what you could do to truly support the podcast? And no, that's not leaving a rating and review. It's simply helping a friend. And that is helping a friend by sharing this episode with them if you think this would resonate with them and help them elevate their performance level, whether that's within themselves, their teams, or their organization. So do that. Help me, help a friend, win-win all around. And hey, you look like a great friend at the same time. So just hit that little share button on your app, and then feel free to fire this episode to anyone that you feel would benefit from it. Finally, there's always more. There's always more lessons around being the highest performing leader that you can possibly be, whether that's for yourself, your team, or your organization. So why don't you subscribe? Subscribe to the show via movingforwardleadership.com/subscribe. And until next time, lead, don't boss, and thanks for coming out. Take care now.